Good morning. I'd like to call to order the December 9th, 2020 meeting of the State Board of Education. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa?
Present.
Mr. Durham?
Present.
Dr. Ernest?
Present.
Dr. Freitas?
Present.
Mr. Gastineau?
Here.
Mr. Mapes? Mr. Mapes?
I see, Pat.
I see him. We'll come back. Mr. Miller?
Here.
Superintendent McCormick?
Here.
Ms. Moat?
Here.
Ms. Rensselaer?
Here.
Mr. Watts?
Here.
And Mr. Mapes, I will mark you present. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So ordered. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the October 7th and November 10th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So ordered. Statement of the chair. I only have a couple congratulations I would like to do. Would like to congratulate Dr. McCormick on her new position as Senior VP of EES Analytics, and Dr. Jenner on her new position as Secretary of Education. I'm excited for both of you. Any board member comments or reports? Seeing none.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
it's kind of like a race to the mute button.
My apologies.
But I did just want to congratulate you for the honor that you recently received in your appointment to the Men's Silver Anniversary Team, which is an honoring of the investment that you've made in the sport, but more importantly, in the leadership that comes with coaching and the investment of developing people, which you've done throughout your entire career. It's a big honor, and on behalf of the board, we are proud of you.
Well, thank you very much. Absolutely. Do we have any public comment, Brian?
We did have, I believe, one or two that have been forwarded via email to the board. May have just been one.
Perfect. Moving on to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Aye.
Yes.
before we vote, I would like to make a record that I am recusing myself from the CTE funding item.
Thank you very much for that reminder, Katie, because I will also be abstaining from consent item D and consent item F myself, the excessive homeschool exit and the common school loan. With that, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So ordered. Moving on to new business. New business A, waiver of consequences, Lakeview Christian School.
Thank you. We have a petition in front of the board for a waiver from choice consequences brought to the board by Lakeview Christian after being placed in the lowest category of school improvement, lowest two, for 3 consecutive years. They are subject to consequences, which means absent a waiver, they will not be able to accept new choice scholarship students into their program. Over the past years, they've instituted a number of interventions to improve their grade on behalf of their students and to show academic improvement. And last year, they came in front of the board and were successful in receiving their waiver. This year, because of the cancellation of statewide testing, the board does not have the traditional metrics in front of it that it otherwise would have. And so, Lakeview has proffered some other data, which was provided to the board in their report, ultimately, the recommendation is that the waiver be granted based on a showing that they have demonstrated the academic improvement necessary to achieve a waiver for another year. And I'll take any questions. And I know a representative from the school is also with us today if board members have any questions about this request.
Any questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes, Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick.
No.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler,
Yes.
and Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Waiver is approved 9-1. Thank you.
Thank you. I did just receive a text from Chad that he cannot hear us. So I know that he is working on that.
I'll continue to call him during votes, and if he's able to hop in, I'll make a note of it.
Moving on, new business item B, HEA 1003 flexibility waiver request. Do we want to do these one at a time or all together? What is the preference?
I will leave that to the discretion of the board. I am prepared today to go line by line if you want.
Let's do that, Chad. It's probably cleaner. We'll start with Monroe County Community School Corporation.
Sure. First up is Monroe County Community School Corporation. They've requested 2 statutes or regulatory provisions to be waived. The first is 2032 8.5, which is the requirements for a reading deficiency remediation plan. And the second request they've made is for 511 IAC 6.2-3.1, which is the iRead requirement. They've requested a waiver from both. Staff recommendation is to deny both. So happy to take them the first and then the second or together.
Any questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Is it our preference to vote on these individually? I'm sorry if we made that decision, but whoever makes the motion, I think, needs to understand whether it's a motion for both requests or a motion on each request. What did we decide, Mr. Chairman?
That I'm good with either one of those. We can do a motion to approve or board approval, or we can do them individually.
Motion to approve both staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Motion to approve the staff recommendation with respect to both provisions in the Monroe County Community School Corporation's waiver. So we'll go Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes, Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick,
No.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler,
Yes.
and Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Motion is approved 9-1.
Moving on to number 2, Culver Community School Corporation.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Culver Community School Corporation has requested a waiver from the student instructional day requirement for the purpose of counting student instructional days by the minute rather than by the instructional hour as required, or as, I'm sorry, rather than by the hour. So The staff recommendation here is that the request be granted and that Culver be allowed to count instructional minutes.
Are there questions by board members?
Move to approve staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes, Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick,
Yes.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rensselaer,
Yes.
and Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Motion passes 10-0.
Moving on to number 3, Urban Act Academy.
So Urban Act Academy has submitted a waiver request for a number of different statutes. Mr. Chair, would you like to take these one by one? Unlike the first from Monroe, these are not necessarily related. Each statute kind of stands on its own, where I can explain the statutes and we can take it as a all together.
BJ, this is Pete. This is going to be similar to the debate we had a couple meetings ago. And I was one of those that was in the minority. I'm happy taking them as a whole. And if it passes, then we're good. And if it doesn't, then we can take them one by one. That work?
Apologies, I was on mute there. Yeah, that is fine with me, Pete. Thank you.
So I'll walk through them one by one. So the first part of their waiver is a request to count the school day and by instructional hours as opposed to full days. The second request is that they be waived from the requirement that they submit a school corporation annual performance report. The recommendation there is to grant that. The next request is that they be relieved of the requirement to offer bullying training. Staff recommendation is to deny that based on the board's past decisions. The next is a waiver from the child suicide awareness and prevention policy requirements. The staff recommendation is to deny that based on the board's past actions. Next is the requirement that the school corporation police departments have minimum training requirements. Staff recommendation is to deny that request based on the board's past actions. Next, they would like a waiver from the criminal gang measure requirements. Staff recommendation is to grant that based on the board's past actions. And finally, they've asked for a waiver in order to count students impacted by COVID as excused absences rather than unexcused absences. The staff recommendation in this case is to deny that as well, because that is already within the authority of school corporations to do on their own. So the board does not need to do that. They simply need to pass that policy at the school corporation level. And I'm happy to take questions about any of those provisions or move to the vote.
Chad, do we have anyone from the school on here?
I do not believe so. They did not respond as wanting to participate, but I could be wrong.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Yes.
So no, Dr. Ernest, I do not believe there's anybody from the school here.
Are there additional questions by board members?
Can you give us a short voiceover, Chad, of what the criminal gang training requirements are, just high level?
Yeah, so essentially those requirements require each school corporation to establish a written policy to address criminal organizations and criminal organization activity within the schools. It requires school corporations to establish educational programs in an effort to address criminal organization activity. Then it requires each school corporation to submit to the department a written report outlining the activities they've taken as part of their plan. And then it requires the department to submit a comprehensive report, but that obviously does not apply to the school corporation.
And just to understand or get some insight into the thinking that's been applied so far, and I understand, and just to play back the standard of review, if you will, that staff is applying is alignment with our prior decision, which was our last meeting, in terms of on coming to the recommendation for denied grant. Am I understanding that correctly?
Criminal gang measures request in particular, the staff recommendation is actually to grant that request. Yes, based on the board's past actions with
Yeah.
respect to those same requests.
Okay. And so we have, again, thanks for refreshing my recollection. We have granted a criminal gang waiver. Was that in front of us last time?
That, I believe, came in front of the board at the October business meeting.
Okay, thank you for reminding me. Okay.
And I think there were like 7 or 9 schools that actually requested that particular provision, I believe.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. I don't have anything further.
Any other questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion? Do we have a motion on this one?
I actually have one more question, and I appreciate everybody being patient with me. Chad, when we're talking about, I hear you that there is a local remedy as it relates to counting students as excused versus unexcused. Can you refresh my recollection whether or not we have entertained a motion like that before at our prior October or November meetings?
This has not come up in front of the board before.
Okay.
This is actually a unique request.
Okay, so as it relates to the request for the motion, to the extent it's helpful, I'd just like to make a record that it seems to me that if we can be helpful to the schools, if there's a desire to have the board take a position in terms of our alignment from a policy standpoint in counting students as excused versus unexcused, specifically related to COVID, I am supportive of providing that guidance, if that's helpful. I recognize it's not necessary, but as we're considering the motion, as colleagues are thinking about how to approach this question, because there are quite a few in here and we may need to take them line by line. I just wanted to share my thinking that in these times, if that's helpful to local school boards for us to take that position, I am willing to do so.
Chad, have we conveyed with the school corporation? I certainly agree with Katie there, but have we conveyed to the local school corporation what the recommended procedure would be on this?
Yeah, so they have received a copy of the recommendation and an explanation of each provision within the recommendation, why it was to grant or to deny. I have not heard back from this school corporation either in this instance, but again, I think part of the presumption here is that when schools submit these waiver requests, it has to be accompanied by a signed resolution passed by their board. So in this instance, the board has that authority. They've clearly made the decision that they wanted a waiver from it. It's just the waiver is just not necessary, and the authority to determine excused versus unexcused absences just isn't in the board's purview.
Okay.
But I understand Ms. Moat's, her point about lending the board support to local school boards.
And maybe that is something we can do just as an education piece to make sure that they understand that they have that authority themselves. I think Katie certainly brought light to the point, which I think was her concern. So maybe that's something we can make a concerted effort to do, is just make sure that they understand that that is a decision that they can make locally.
Absolutely. And I'll make a note, and when the final orders are sent out to the schools, I will highlight that and include an explanation of that with the final order that goes out.
Byron, I saw you clicked off, sir. Are you ready?
Hey, thank you. Way to watch. Hey, just a question. And maybe this is for Chad or however you want to answer. One thing that might be good in this is if we had a little more. That's why I asked if the school from the other one was here or this one, because I think the intent of 1003 was for these things to be a way to improve student learning, right? So if I put that metric on each one of those, I really need to hear more on how that is going to improve student learning, and I think that needs to become more of a metric as we as we look at this as to the why that is, because it's not necessarily just to, while it is a taking away of things that take all this time and what have you, but that is for the reason of improving student learning. So I think we need to really put that metric against each one of those, and that was going to be my question to the school if they were on. So thank you. And then one question: so if we were to fail this as a whole, then we would come back and do each one individually like we did the last time. Is that correct, BJ? Was that your intent?
That we can do that, or if there's the way we've done it on the last two has been staff recommendation, so we can either go with that, and that would be some approved and some not approved, or we can, if staff recommendation is not approved, then we will do them individually,
Thank you.
or however the motion is made. Is there a motion on new business item 3, Urban Act Academy? Are there any additional questions before I ask that? Okay, is there a motion on Urban Act Academy?
I move that we accept the board's recommendation for Urban Act Academy.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Durham?
Yes.
Dr. Ernest?
No.
Dr. Freitas?
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau?
Yes.
Mr. Mapes?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
No.
Superintendent McCormick? Superintendent McCormick?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Moat? Ms. Rentschler?
Yes.
And Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Staff recommendations are approved 9-2.
Thank you. Moving on, new business item 4, MSD Pike Township.
So Pike Township has requested a number of waivers as well. The first is for the school year in order to count instructional hours as opposed to instructional days. So they will still be they will still be providing the equivalent number of hours rather than days. A waiver from the school corporation annual performance report. And then same as Urban Act Academy, they've asked for a waiver from the with respect to excused versus unexcused absences. And again, the staff recommendation is to deny that only because it's not within the board's purview. It's within the school corporation's purview already. They have the authority to do that on their own. So it's the school year to count hours rather than days, a waiver from the school corporation annual performance report, and a waiver in order to provide flexibility with respect to excused versus unexcused absences.
Are there questions by board members?
What's the rationale for the exception?
Can you say that one more time, please, David? Chad, did you get that? It broke up on me. It may not have on everyone else.
I did not get that up. Sorry.
David, could you say that one more time, please?
Yes, we're making all kinds of exceptions, and I would like to hear for each one that's presented the rationale by the school district and why they're asking for a waiver or an exception. I feel we shouldn't be doing this because someone asked for them. If that's the case, if we're going to do them all when asked, then we should propose changing the legislation. So I think it's incumbent upon us to listen to the rationale and see if it makes sense. And if it does, we vote for it. If there's no rationale or it doesn't make sense, I think we need to carefully consider whether we should grant that or not.
Absolutely.
So the rationales provided in the waivers themselves, which I believe were attached to the board material. I'm happy to go through each one in the case of Pike before the board takes action, if that's what you all would like. So the request with respect to the school year was in order to count hours instead of days, was to in order the school corporation to use flexibility when it comes to e-learning versus in-person learning. That way, when they're providing instruction, if it doesn't add up to like the requisite amounts of 5.5 hours, for example, maybe they get 4.5 hours as opposed to 5.5. Those 4.5 aren't completely lost, right? They can make up the last hour at a different time. So it's just counting the way we count the days slightly differently. The second, with respect to the school corporation's annual performance report, was in order to relieve additional layers of administrative burden that is imposed on school corporations as they're dealing with COVID and trying to provide in-person educational opportunities to their students. So that's in order to provide administrative flexibility for the school corporation. And then the final, the compulsory attendance, which is the excused versus unexcused absence. The rationale provided by the school corporation is that due to the way, the manner in which COVID may affect students, they were seeking flexibility in order to ensure that students that were absent because of COVID were not counted as absent, that they were able to count them as excused, which again is already something that school corporations have the authority to do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move to accept staff recommendation.
Yep.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
No.
Dr. Freitas,
No.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick,
Yes.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rensselaer,
Yes.
and Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-2.
Okay, moving on to the next one. Katie, I see that you have a guest with us. Would you two care to run number 5? Because I'm going to abstain from this one, so I will let you run it if you would, please.
Sure thing. Thanks for your patience with me. Just a moment.
Absolutely, and welcome to your guest.
Thank you. This is my son, James. He's e-learning and he is on a little break. We're sharing an office together right now.
Welcome, James.
And so, Mr. Chairman, can you reorient me, please? I know you just told me, and if you can
We
remind me.
are on number 5, new business, the Evansville-Vanderburgh School Corporation.
Thank you. And so we'll call up that item. And Chad, if you would, thanks for walking us through this particular request as you have with the others.
Not a problem. So the last request in front of the board is from Evansville-Vanderburgh School Corporation. 2 requests made by them, both of which have been seen by the board before. The first is a waiver with respect to the school year in order to count the school year in instructional minutes as opposed to days. The second is with respect to a waiver from the requirement that they complete the school corporation annual performance report. Staff recommendation in both cases is to grant the waiver that was requested.
Thank you. Any questions from board members?
Move
Seeing
to
none.
approve staff recommendation.
Second.
Great. Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick,
Yes.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rensler.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you, Katie. Moving on to C, teacher preparation programs.
Good morning, members of the board. We have 8 items to bring to you this morning. 4 of those are for new program proposals and 4 are for requests for extending state accreditation for educator preparation providers. I will go ahead and just go through the list as they are in order on the agenda. I have invited representatives from each of the programs to attend the meeting this morning. So if you have any additional questions, we do have representatives who can answer those for you. The first item is hashtag teach, which is a training educators and creating hope teacher preparation program. Before I move on with this one, I do have one correction to make to the memo, and I'd like to note that right now before going on. The recommendation should read elementary K6, secondary 512, and it should also include all grade P12. So P12 was omitted from the memo, so I would like to make that or note that correction for the record. Hashtag Teach is a non-higher education transition to teaching program. Is currently approved to offer teacher preparation in both Michigan and North Carolina. It is focused on recruiting and preparing teacher candidates to work in the urban school setting, and they are seeking to expand their program into Indiana. As a reminder to the board, rules do allow for a non-higher education entity to offer a transition to teaching program in Indiana. So they are not a traditional higher ed program. However, they are a non-higher ed entity that could be approved to offer transition to teaching. And we have had at least 2 or 3 of those approved in the past. Please note that they are already in the process of seeking CAPE accreditation, and CAPE is the national accrediting body for teacher preparation providers in the United States. And that's also required for Michigan and North Carolina. So it is the conclusion of the majority of the review team and the department that the state board approved 3 years, and please note 3 years initial approval. Then we will come back to you, to the board, and after 3 years with a follow-up and recommendation on continued recommendation status.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions by board members?
Move approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and the second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick,
Yes.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rensler,
Yes.
and Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Moving on to number 2, Ball State University.
Okay, Ball State University is one of our 2 virtual instruction proposals that we're sharing with you this morning. Currently in Indiana, we only have 1 virtual instruction program available for teachers who would like to add virtual instruction to their license. As a reminder, virtual instruction is it's actually the only area that a teacher must already hold a license in order to add that area to his or her license. So it's not a standalone initial licensure option. And obviously, considering the times that we're living in right now, we are excited that we are receiving proposals of this type. So we would like to recommend approval for the virtual instruction licensure addition program for Ball State University. And by the way, that covers virtual instruction, covers the same grade settings that are on the license that the teacher already holds. So that's unique as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick,
Yes.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rensler,
Yes.
Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Motion's been approved.
Thank you. Moving on to number 3, Goshen College.
Okay, we are excited to share the national accreditation results for the Department of Education at Goshen College. The Accreditation Council of the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation, or CAPE, granted national accreditation to the Department of Ed at Goshen College at the initial licensure level. And I would like to point out that they've received no areas for improvement or stipulations in their final accreditation report. And that is not an easy thing to attain. So I just want to point that out and congratulate them. So we are requesting the state board recognize the decision of CAPE and approve continued state accreditation for Goshen College, the Department of Ed, and their next accreditation visit is scheduled for spring 2027.
Thank you. Are there any questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick,
Yes.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rensler,
Yes.
Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Moving on to number 4, Indiana University East.
Yes, and
Mr. Chairman. Hello.
David, you are cracking up on us. I know that this is an Indiana University school, so if you could restate your abstention, Chad, I could not hear it. Was that the same?
Yeah, sorry. Is this better? Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Now we have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Given my appointment and employment at Indiana University, I'm going to be recusing myself from this item.
okay, so at this time, I'd like to share the good news for the School of Education at Indiana University East. They too received national accreditation from the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation. And likewise, we would like to ask that the board recognize the decision of CAPE and approve continued state accreditation for Indiana University East School of Education. Their next accreditation visit is scheduled for spring 2027.
Are there questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick,
Yes.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rensler,
Yes.
Mr. Watts,
Yes.
excuse me, motion approved.
To you. Moving on to number 5, Martin University.
Okay, thank you. Martin University was originally recommended for an initial 3-year approval status or duration in 2017, and we are pleased to report that they have successfully completed phase 2 of the CAPE application process, and they are now eligible for the CAPE accreditation review and on-site visit, which is scheduled for spring 2022. Just a quick summary of what phase 2 is. Institutions must apply for membership with CAPE, and there are 2 phases, and phase 2 indicates that they are and confirms that Martin University is at the satisfactory level to host a visit, and they have shown evidence of moving towards what is required for CAPE accreditation. So we are happy to see that they have taken on that process diligently. So to ensure that state recognition does not lapse, because again, it was originally for 3 years, we do request that the state board grant continued recognition through the fall of 2022 for the School of Education, which includes early childhood education and elementary education at Martin University.
Are there questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick,
Yes.
Ms. Moat, Ms. Rentschler,
Yes.
Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is approved.
Thank you. Moving on to number 6, the University of Notre Dame.
Okay, a similar situation, the University of Notre Dame seeking to host its first national accreditation visit from the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation in fall 2025. There is a possibility it could be in 2024, but we want to make sure that state recognition does not lapse. So to ensure that that does not happen, we are requesting that the state board grant continued recognition through the fall 2025 for the University of Notre Dame Alliance for Catholic Education.
Are there questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick,
Yes.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler, Ms. Rentschler.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Moving on to number 7, Indiana State University.
Okay, and Indiana State University is also proposing a virtual instruction licensure edition program. Again, as I said earlier, virtual instruction is the only area that is an add-on only. And again, considering the times that we're living in, we're happy to see proposals of this type come forward, and I anticipate we probably will receive more next year. So likewise, as earlier, we recommend that the state board approve the virtual instruction licensure edition program for Indiana State University.
Are there questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick.
Yes. Yes.
Chad, did we lose you?
You hear me?
Yes. Did you get Jennifer's yes vote?
Dr. McCormick,
Yes.
Moat, Ms. Rentschler, and Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Yep, I got them all. Thank you. Approved.
You? Moving on.
Okay, and are you ready for Valparaiso?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry. The final, okay, the final item is we're recommending approval of a new elementary and secondary education transition to teaching program at Valparaiso University. I have to compliment them for working on this proposal while also undergoing a CAPE review, an on-site visit. So they had a very busy year, but they have recognized the need for an elementary and secondary transition to teaching program in their area. And we are happy to recommend the state board approve this new transition to teaching program at Valparaiso University.
Thank you. Are there questions by board members? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Approved.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLosa,
Yes.
Mr. Durham,
Yes.
Dr. Ernest,
Yes.
Dr. Freitas,
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau,
Yes.
Mr. Mapes,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick,
Yes.
Ms. Moat,
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler,
Yes.
and Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you, and congratulations to all of our schools of ed. Moving on to discussion, accountability framework update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick update on the accountability framework. We have successfully completed 4 accountability panels during which we engaged with parents, administrators, educators, and excuse me, and superintendents. Just want to share a big thank you to all of the members who participated in those panels, engaging conversations, invaluable feedback, and incredibly helpful. All of those panel discussions are posted on the State Board of Education website for anyone to go back and listen to the conversation and listen to the feedback. In addition to the panel conversations, we have received over 300 surveys, which include nearly 1,000 unique comments related specifically to the information, the concepts, and ideas presented in the framework. So this period of feedback has been incredibly valuable, incredibly fruitful, and have given staff a lot to consider and reflect upon. So next steps, given the amount of feedback we received, we want to take time to process it all, summarize it all, and capture it in a revised framework that is presented at the January board meeting for the board's consideration. We feel strongly that taking the time to incorporate the feedback will ensure that the board has a framework upon which they will rely that accurately and sufficiently reflects research, key concepts and ideas, and more importantly, critical stakeholder feedback as you go into the rulemaking process. So with that, expect a final revised framework with a summary of the feedback in January, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the process thus far or any of the concepts or ideas presented in the framework.
Are there any questions by board members? Ron, job well done. I know you don't always hear that, but this process has been as open as anything I've ever seen in government. So I take my hat off to you, tip it to you. Very good job.
Thank you, sir. I would be remiss if I didn't point out my wonderful office decorations, Dr. Ernest. These should look familiar to you. So I am always surrounded by the incredible work that went on during the graduation pathways panel, I believe, and appreciate that.
Thank you. Do we have anything else prior to adjournment?
A quick suggestion, a wonder, would there be support, our teacher preparation programs, just reflecting on the commitment that's required of the higher ed institutions? Virtually, certainly, I would imagine the lift is lighter, but we may have institutions making a commute of varying distances to be with us in person, or rather short and often minimal to no interaction. Wondered if we might consider moving those to consent as opposed to new business. Would love to open the floor to that or see if there's a second or others who are thinking that way, as well as a reframe or challenge to that thinking.
I agree with that. The department does all the work to make certain that those programs are in line, and they have a national accreditation program. I think we could put them on a consent agenda item.
I would agree as
This
well.
is Jennifer. Our first 2 years when I chaired, we tried to have that move to consent for obvious reasons. I agree with what's been said. I do know, working with the directors, there was hesitancy to do that because of some of the members wanting to have more detail. So I think it's healthy to open that back up. I think it's necessary, or I think it's a good idea to put it on consent. Just know this has been talked about quite a bit.
And this is something we can do. And obviously, if there are questions for a specific university, I think we could obviously pull that specific university off and put it on. But no, I agree wholeheartedly. Those folks are very, very busy, and anything we can do to reduce their workload would be welcomed, I'm sure. Any other concerns or questions from board members?
Just to follow up to make sure I close the loop appropriately, do I need to make a formal motion? Is that something that have we reached a decision? So when we're together again in January, or the next time we have that, do we have consent to move those items to consent, and then to only pull off those where there is some meaningful differentiation or a need for discussion?
Brian, do you feel like we need to take a vote on this?
Yes, I think we prefer that from a staff perspective for clarity. And then if there are any specific, issues with individual schools, I think we can try to address that, but we would prefer that clarity going forward.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll state that as a motion then. I move that for future meetings, effective in 2021 and beyond, that the approval of teacher preparation programs will be a default on consent, with the ability to move individual schools to discussion for compelling reasons.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ms. DeLissa.
Yes.
Mr. Durham.
Yes.
Dr. Ernest.
Yes.
Dr. Freitas.
Yes.
Mr. Gastineau.
Yes.
Mr. Mapes.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Superintendent McCormick.
Yes.
Ms. Mose.
Yes.
Ms. Rentschler.
Yes.
Mr. Watts.
Yes.
And let me circle back to Dr. Ernest, because I think I might have heard Dr. Freitas chime in. Dr. Ernest.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion approved.
Thank you. And before we adjourn, I do want to thank you for your kind comments again earlier, Katie. I've received several texts while we've been in our meeting this morning, so that's nice to relive again. So thank you very much. Anything else for the good of the cause? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. We stand adjourned.